I heard the sound before I saw it. Not the splash of water, not the creak of rope or the clink of a bucket. It was something else, wet, wheezing breathing, coming from the old well at the edge of my late grandmother's village. The same well they had sealed shut 13 years ago. The same well nobody talked about. Not at family gatherings. Not during visits. Not even at her funeral. But tonight, as the wind shifted and the night fell heavy with the scent of storm, I heard something rise from inside it. And it wasn't alone. My name is Obinna, and I wasn't supposed to come back. Not after what happened in this village. Not after they told me to forget. But death doesn't ask permission. When my grandmother passed, Mama Ogechi, I had no choice but to return. She raised me, taught me to pray, to fear, to keep quiet when I shouldn't, and to never go near the well. It stood at the far end of the village, abandoned, covered with a thick cement lid and rusted iron rods bound in place with red cloth and cowries. Every time I passed it as a child, I felt like it watched me. Now, as a grown man, I stood near it again and realized that feeling hadn't changed. The funeral was quiet, too quiet. Nobody cried, not even my uncles. My cousins avoided my eyes. The elders barely looked at the casket. Only the priest spoke with any feeling. And even he skipped over her early years like they were poison. When we laid her to rest, I felt the ground tremble, not an earthquake. Something beneath. After the burial, I couldn't sleep. The wind whistled unnaturally. My skin itched. And in the middle of the night, I woke up gasping, like something had reached up from the floor and squeezed my throat. And then I heard it. That sound. Wet. Mucusy. Breathing. Coming from the direction of the well. I grabbed a flashlight and walked in the dark. My feet knew the path without trying. Past the banana trees. Past the school block. To the clearing with the well. The red cloth around the metal seal fluttered like it was alive. The iron rods were no longer stiff. They were bent, split open just slightly, like something had pushed them from underneath. And at the base of the well, I saw it. Water, pooling from the cracks, black and glistening. But it wasn't the water that made me drop the flashlight. It was the thing in the water. A hand, thin, pale, bloated, reaching out, pressed flat against the inside of the well cover. Then it vanished. I stumbled backward and ran. Didn't stop until I was in Mama Ogechi's room. I slammed the door and sat on her bed, panting, sweating. On the wall, her old wooden crucifix stared at me. Her Bible lay on the shelf. But what caught my eye was a torn piece of cloth, one I recognized. It was the same red fabric they used to seal the well. And tucked inside it, a small drawing of the well, of 4 children standing near it. One of them looked exactly like me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I returned. The well looked normal. The rods were back in place. No water on the ground. No hand. No sign of life. I asked one of the elders, Papa Eam. He was blind in one eye and smelled of bitter leaf and kerosene. When I mentioned the well, he spat on the ground. Your grandmother sealed it. For a reason. You should let it rot. What's under it? He shook his head. Not what. Who? Then he walked away. I began asking questions. Most villagers refused to answer. Some laughed awkwardly. Others said, "You've been gone too long." But one woman, an old widow named Mama Felicia, leaned close and whispered, "Your grandmother was the last one to look down that well. And when she came back, she said she saw herself. But the eyes weren't hers." That night, I went back. I don't know why. Curiosity? Obsession? Fate? The moon was full. The air was still. I stood before the well, holding Mama's flashlight and the drawing. Then something whispered, not in the wind, in my ear. It said my name, Obinna, and it was her voice, my grandmother's, calling from the well. What would you do if someone you buried yesterday whispered your name tonight? Would you run? Or would you open the thing they died trying to seal? In next chapter, I'll show you how I tried to dig into my grandmother's past. And what I found in her journal made me question who I really am. The next morning, I opened my grandmother's journal. I don't even know why I had never seen it before. It had been there, tucked between 2 cooking pots in her room, wrapped in faded cloth, dusty and untouched. Maybe it was waiting for me, or maybe it had been hiding. The cover was soft leather, marked with a symbol I didn't recognize. A circle split into 4 equal parts, with a drop drawn in each quadrant. Blood? Water? I flipped through the brittle pages, and there, on the fourth page, with a line written in her tight, sharp handwriting, "The well is not cursed. It is guarded. What lies beneath it was not meant to drink. It was meant to remember." I read the sentence over and over, and something cold settled deep in my chest. That day, I went to see Pastor Anin. He had been in the village the longest, baptized half the elders, buried the other half. When I asked about Mama Ogechi, his face hardened. "You're asking questions best left in the ground," he said. "Why did she seal the well?" I asked. He sighed and lit a cigarette. 13 years ago, 4 children disappeared. One of them was your cousin. You were too young to remember. My throat went dry. Me? He nodded slowly. Your name was on the list, Obinna. But I didn't disappear. He leaned closer. No, you were found at the base of the well, lying on the stone, soaking wet, eyes open, not breathing. I stared at him, mouth open. What happened?" He flicked the ash into a can. "Your grandmother climbed down there herself, pulled you out, said she made a trade." I whispered, "A trade with what?" He shook his head. "She never said, only that it wanted memory, and it would keep 3. I felt like the air had vanished from the room. Back at her house, I searched again. Every crack in the floor, every pot, every wall. Behind a loose brick, I found it. A small black box, wrapped in palm leaves and tied with thick thread. Inside, a braid of hair, a locket, and a single white cowrie with blood dried on it. And a note. If the well opens again, seal it with memory, not fire. And don't believe the voice that wears my face." I couldn't breathe. The voice I heard last night had worn her voice. But it wasn't her. I walked to the village well before sundown. I didn't care if the elders saw me. I had the journal in my bag and the cowrie in my pocket. The iron rods were quiet now, still bent. I leaned down and whispered, "Who are you?" The wind didn't answer, but the stone beneath my feet hummed, deep, pulsing, slow, like a sleeping heartbeat. And then a child's laugh rose from the well. Quick, sharp, gone. That night, I had a dream. I stood in the center of the village, but the houses were upside down and floating in the sky. A massive well stood where the church should have been. It was open, and inside it, a spiral staircase led down, deeper and deeper. I began to descend. The air grew thicker with every step. Then I saw her, Mama Ogechi, kneeling beside the well. But when she turned to me, her eyes were completely white, and she said, "Don't come down here, Obinna. You were never supposed to wake up." I jolted awake, my shirt soaked, mouth dry. The well was calling me again. But I knew now. I had been there before. 13 years ago, and I brought something back. I returned to Pastor Anin in the morning. He handed me a single photograph. Old, faded, torn. 4 children, standing near the well. One of them was clearly me. The others, their faces were scratched out. He said, "You were the only one we ever got back." I whispered, "What happened to the others?" His voice was distant. They were seen in the well. Weeks later, still alive, but they were speaking backwards, eyes glowing. No one could reach them. Why not? He said nothing, then finally whispered, "Because they weren't really the children anymore." That night, the well cracked open. The sound rang through the entire village, stone breaking, iron snapping. I ran outside with my flashlight. Villagers were screaming, children crying. At the far end of the clearing, the well stood wide open. The lid had split in 2. The iron rods twisted outward like hands reaching. And the water inside? It was boiling. Steam hissed upward, and then a figure emerged. Pale, dripping. It looked like a girl, maybe 12, but her eyes were black, and her mouth hung open unnaturally wide. She turned and smiled at me. 13 years ago, I was pulled from the well. But now I understand. I didn't escape. I was released. In next chapter, I'll show you what the villagers tried to bury, and how the well doesn't just feed on fear, it feeds on forgotten truths. They buried the past, but they forgot one thing. The past doesn't stay buried in water. It floats. After the well cracked open, chaos swallowed the village. Children were locked indoors. Elders gathered at the shrine. Some cried. Some prayed. Others, like Pastor Anin, simply left, packed their things before sunrise and walked out without a word. Cowards. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. All night, I kept seeing that girl's face. The way her mouth stretched unnaturally. The black pits where her eyes should be. And the smile, not angry, not wild. Just knowing, like she had waited years for that moment. In the morning, I walked back to the well. I needed to see it again, to confirm it was real. But when I arrived, it was closed, fully sealed. No cracks, no steam, no sign of the girl. The rods were straight, the red cloth intact. It was as if the night before had never happened. But I knew what I saw, and then I noticed something at the base of the well. Wet footprints, small, barefoot, leading toward the trees. I followed them, through the bush, past the goat pens, to the back of the old school building. And there, lying on the steps, the red school ribbon, from the drawing, the one the girl had worn in the picture with me. I picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside the knot, a tiny, rusted tag was sewn in, with one word, Chinello. The name hit me like thunder. Chinello, my cousin, one of the 4 that disappeared 13 years ago. I ran back to Mama Ogechi's journal, flipped through the pages. Half were torn, water-stained, but one page held 4 names. Obinna, Chinello, Ifani, Ada, and beneath them, a sentence. Only one came back, but all 4 were touched. I was touched. By what? I needed answers, so I did what no one else dared. I went to Mama Efuru. She was the village taboo keeper, the one who lived near the Forbidden Grove. People said she was a witch. I didn't care. She opened the door before I even knocked. Come, she said, like she'd been expecting me. Her hut smelled of charcoal and bitter herbs. Bones hung from the ceiling. The walls were covered in symbols carved into ash. She poured black tea into a gourd and handed it to me. I drank without asking. It tasted like iron. Then she spoke. 13 years ago, the children went missing. The village searched for days. She sat, eyes cloudy but sharp. They were found at the well, but only you came back, alive, whole, breathing. I asked what happened to them. She stirred the air with her fingers. They saw the thing in the water, and the thing saw them back. I leaned in. What thing? She whispered. It is not a spirit, not a demon. It is a remnant, a leftover from before the first drumbeat, before language, before God. A God. She shook her head. Worse, a witness. It remembers what the village did, and it waits. It needs memory. It feeds on it. That's why your grandmother sealed the well, not to trap it, to trap the truth. I felt cold. My grandmother made a trade. She nodded. She gave up the memory of 3, so one could return. I whispered, me. She placed her hand on mine. You're not who you think you are, Obinna. You're not the survivor. You're the anchor. I left the hut with my heart cracking. My skin felt like paper. The wind carried whispers in my ears that wouldn't stop. And when I looked in the mirror that night, I didn't see myself. I saw 4 children, all of them staring back. The next day, the village square was full of smoke. Someone had set fire to the old shrine, and written on the wall beside it, in mud, "The well is open. He is remembering." I knew it meant me. That night, the whispers became voices. And not just inside me. All across the village, people heard things. Children cried, saying their names were being called from inside the well. Goats ran in circles until they dropped. A baby was born without mouth. And I dreamed of the descent. A staircase, winding, deep, built from teeth. And at the bottom, the 3 children. Not dead, not alive, just waiting, their skin pale, their eyes blank, their mouths moving without sound. And behind them, a creature, not large, but infinite, made of hands, of eyes, of mouths, of memory. It opened its eyes, and I woke up screaming. What if your memories aren't yours? What if every thought, every dream, every fear is just borrowed from someone or something waiting to come back and collect? In next chapter, I'll show you what happens when the villagers try to reseal the well, and the thing below begins crawling up their walls. The air smelled different the next morning. Not rain, not smoke, rot, like something old and wet had finally clawed its way to the surface and was just waiting. I woke to noise. Not birds, not children. Voices, shouting, chanting. I rushed outside. Half the village had gathered at the well. Some held brooms. Others held machetes. A few had brought drums and calabashes. It wasn't a protest. It was a ritual, led by Elder Nwakigo, the oldest living woman in the village. They were trying to reseal the well. I pushed my way through. "What are you doing?" I shouted. She turned to me, her eyes wild and red-rimmed. "We're putting it back to sleep," she cried. She raised a rusted bell and began chanting in a language I didn't recognize. 3 men had brought sacks of red soil and poured it around the base. Someone else began hammering new iron rods across the mouth. A child sobbed nearby. The well just stood there still, silent, but the air vibrated. And then it happened. The hammer struck a rod. Once, twice, and then the scream came. Not from person, from beneath. A scream so loud, so sharp, it split the sky for a second. Birds flew out from the trees in every direction. The villagers dropped their tools and fell to the ground. Blood ran from Elder Nwakigo's nose. I clutched my ears and collapsed. The well wasn't being sealed. It was being provoked. When I woke up, the sun was down. The villagers were gone. And the well? The iron rods were gone again, bent outward. The red cloth had turned black. And there was something new. On the ground. In the dirt. Finger marks. Dozens of them. Thin. Small. Like children. All pointing outward from the mouth of the well. That night, the dreams got worse. No stairs this time. Just darkness. And whispers. Millions of whispers. All saying the same thing. Tell them what they did. I woke up gasping. Went straight to Mama Ogechi's journal. I flipped to the final pages. The ones written in trembling, shaky letters. One entry read, "They came to me, crying. Wet. Barefoot. They asked why. I told them I didn't know. I lied. I remember now. They weren't taken. We gave them. The village chose." I stared at the words until my vision blurred. What did that mean? We gave them? I needed to know. So I went to Papa MBA, the last surviving elder who wasn't part of the sealing. He was almost 90, deaf in one ear, mostly blind. But when I said the words, the well, he gripped my wrist with a strength that surprised me. His voice was hoarse. "Your grandmother. She didn't seal the well because it was dangerous. She sealed it because it was a mirror. It showed the village what they'd done, and they couldn't bear it." I asked, "What did they do?" He took a long time before answering, then said, "During the war, they made a pact to protect the village. A blood price. They chose 4 children, every generation. And 13 years ago, it was your generation." I staggered backward. No, she would never." He grabbed me again. "She saved you because she loved you. But the others were the payment." I couldn't breathe. I returned to the well, sat in front of it for hours, said nothing. The wind howled through the trees. Then, quietly, something climbed out. Not physically, just a presence. A pressure. It sat beside me, and in my own voice, it whispered, "You remember now, don't you?" I closed my eyes, and suddenly, I did. The water, the hands, the chanting, Chinello screaming my name, me trying to pull her back, the village elders holding me down, the rope around my chest, the words my grandmother said as she pushed me in. "Forgive us." I had blocked it. They had made me forget. Or maybe the thing below had taken the memory in exchange for my life. But it didn't matter now. The past had surfaced, and the well was no longer just a hole in the ground. It was awake. They said it was just water, but it was memory. Memory made solid, made angry, made hungry. In next chapter, I'll show you what happens when I stop resisting and descend into the well myself. Because I need to find what's been waiting for me down there all these years. Have you ever stood over a hole so dark, so deep you could feel it breathing? Not wind, not emptiness, but breathing. I stood before the well one last time, just before dawn. No villagers, no rods, no red cloth, just me and the memory I had spent my whole life forgetting. The night before, I had dreamed of Chinello again. But this time, she wasn't screaming. She was singing. A lullaby. The same one Mama Ogechi used to hum when I was sick. Only now, the voice was warped, deep, slow, echoing like it came from underwater. When I woke, I knew. I had to go in. I packed rope, a flashlight, matches, Mama's journal, and the blood-marked cowrie from her hidden box. I didn't tell anyone. Not the priest. Not the elders. Not even Chica, the girl who now watched me from behind windows whenever I passed. I tied the rope to the strong iron hook near the well, dropped it in. It disappeared into the black. I took one deep breath, then climbed in. The first few feet were rough stone, damp and mossy. Then the walls changed. The stone became smooth, almost like polished clay. The air grew colder. My breath turned white, and the sound of the village above disappeared. All I could hear was my own heartbeat and a drip, 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 drip. I climbed down for what felt like forever. The rope swayed. My flashlight flickered. The walls pulsed slightly, as if alive. Then I reached the bottom, but it wasn't a floor. It was water, thick, black, and unmoving. It didn't ripple, didn't splash, just waited. I dropped into it. It wasn't wet. It was like stepping into memory. I was standing on something, but it didn't feel like earth. I turned in a slow circle, and then voices all around me. Children's laughter, Mama Ogechi's prayer voice, the priest's funeral sermon, Chinello's scream, all playing at once. I dropped to my knees, clutched my ears, but the sound came from inside. Then the darkness shifted. A figure emerged, not walking, floating. Her head hung low, her long hair covered her face. But I knew that shape, that frame. Chinello, I whispered. She raised her head slowly. Her face was cracked like porcelain, but her eyes were mine. She smiled and said, "It wasn't your fault, but it is your burden." I cried, fell to the ground. She knelt beside me, touched my face with a hand that felt like both fire and ice. She whispered, "It's waiting. Go further." Then she vanished. The wall beside me cracked open. Not stone, skin. It peeled itself apart to reveal a narrow corridor. A tunnel, glowing faintly red. The air pulsed like lungs. I stepped through. Inside, the walls whispered, "Obinna, come back. We missed you. You promised." I walked, one foot in front of the other. The floor was made of water, but I didn't sink. The ceiling dripped memories. Images formed in the puddles. My grandmother crying over a baby's shoe. My mother screaming into an empty crib. Chinello standing at the edge of the well, holding a rope, smiling, then falling. At the end of the tunnel was a chamber. Circular, silent. Inside were 3 figures. Children, kneeling, unmoving, covered in mud and ash. Each wore a ribbon. Red, yellow, blue. The 4th spot was empty, but a name was scratched into the floor. Obinna. I understood now. They weren't trapped. They weren't cursed. They were sacrificed, and I was spared. My return was paid for with their lives. But they didn't hate me. They waited for me, to remember, to finish it. A shadow shifted behind them. It grew taller, taller, until it filled the chamber, a being made entirely of faces, screaming, crying, laughing. Thousands of faces, some I knew, some I didn't, all whispering in unison. "You remember, so you belong." I held up the cowrie from Mama's box. It burned in my hand. I shouted, "I trade memory for freedom." The being froze. The cowrie exploded in white light. And suddenly, silence. The chamber cracked. The ground shook. The walls screamed. And then I was falling. Upward. Through water. Through shadow. Through screaming light. Until I hit the ground outside the well. Soaked. Alone. Alive. I looked around. The well was sealed again. No red cloth. No iron rods. Just smooth stone. A newborn silence. But I felt it. In my bones. The truth wasn't gone. It was sealed inside me. Sometimes the only way out is through. But when you carry the memory of what they buried, you don't escape. You become the vessel. In next chapter, I'll show you how the village reacts to my return, and how they already knew this day would come. When I opened my eyes, the sky above the village was red. Not from sunset, from something else. Like the clouds themselves were bleeding. I lay on the ground beside the well for a long time, breathing, not moving, just feeling. The rope I had used was gone. The entrance sealed again, smooth stone, no cracks, no cloth. Like nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. The air tasted different now. Metallic, heavy. And when I stood, my body felt both weightless and crushed at the same time. Like I was full of things not meant to be carried. I walked back through the village. Slowly. Everyone stared. Children hid behind doorways. Old women crossed themselves. One man dropped his basket and ran. Even Papa Ikena, who had known me since I was a baby, stood at a distance, eyes wide. "You went in," he whispered. I nodded. "And you came out." He stepped back like I was contagious. I returned to Mama Ogechi's house. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. But the air inside was wrong. My grandmother's crucifix had cracked down the middle. The journal I left on her bed was now completely blank, and the candle I hadn't lit was already burning. I sat down on her mat and whispered, "Why did you send me?" The wind outside answered, "Because only you could carry it." That night, I dreamed of fire, the village burning, people screaming, children standing silently as the flames consumed everything. And behind them, the well stood wide open, its mouth grinning. I woke in sweat, and the candle had burned itself into the floor. In its wax, a word had formed. Opened. The next day it began. The whispers didn't stay inside me. They spread. Mama Felicia, the widow who once told me about Mama Ogechi's visions, began muttering to herself in the market. They came back. All of them. Faces in the basin. Eyes in the soup pot. She collapsed in front of the pepper stall and didn't wake up. Her eyes were open, mouth stuck in a scream, but her heart still beat. She was alive, but empty. Then it spread to the children. Little Namdi stood in the compound staring at the wall. When his mother called him, he turned slowly and whispered, "They're in the roof. They remember everything." Then he fell unconscious. By nightfall, 3 more people fell. Same symptoms. Eyes open, breathing, but not here. The priest returned. He came with a Bible and a trembling hand. He tried to pray over the well. The air crackled. Lightning struck the tree behind him. He ran without finishing the verse. I didn't leave the house. I sat with the blank journal, trying to write, try to remember anything before the well. But I couldn't. My childhood was a fog. My parents? Blurry. Only the well remained clear. It was like the thing below had consumed the rest and left only itself behind. That's when Chica came. She stood at my door at midnight, silent, holding something, a drawing, for stick-figure children, and a 5th figure, larger, black, with spirals for eyes. She looked up at me. "They said you brought it home." I took the drawing. "What else did they say?" She didn't blink. "That it used your face to get out." My blood ran cold. She handed me a small object wrapped in cloth. I opened it. Inside was a tooth. Smooth, human, child size, and on the cloth, written in charcoal, "You are the vessel now." That night, the village bell rang. No one had touched it. It hadn't rung in 10 years. But now it tolled. Low, deep, 13 times. 1 for each year since the children disappeared. 1 for each truth buried. The well is sealed, but the door is not closed. Because I brought it back. And now it's in the soil, the wind, the people. It's in me. In next chapter, I'll show you what happens when the villagers turn on me, and why the thing inside the well never wanted to stay buried in the first place. They came for me just after the 9th bell toll. No warning, no talking, just footsteps and fire. I heard the footsteps first, slow, heavy, deliberate. Then came the rustle of wrappers, the clatter of machetes, the dragging of rope. When I opened the door, they were already waiting. 6 men, 3 women, all from the village. Faces I knew, faces that used to greet me with smiles, now twisted with fear and determination. Behind them, Elder Nwakigo stood with a bowl of ash in her hands. She stepped forward, spoke the words coldly. The vessel must be bound. I backed into the house, but the air inside had already shifted. The walls whispered, the floor creaked. Even the shadows were pulling away from me. I knew then, the well had turned the village against me. Or maybe they had always feared I'd remember. They rushed me, pinned me to the floor, tied my wrists with red rope dipped in palm oil. Someone placed cola, nut in my mouth, and whispered a curse of silence. They marched me through the village square barefoot. No one stopped them. Even the priest watched silently from behind the chapel door. The children didn't cry. They just stared. They tied me to the irako tree at the far edge of the compound. The same tree where sacrifices were once made during the famine. I remembered stories Mama Ogechi told me as a boy. If they tie you to this tree and you die before sunrise, the village is cleansed. But if you live, something must die in your place. I looked into the crowd. No one met my eyes. Only Chica stepped forward. She held her drawing again. The same black figure in the middle. She pointed to it. "It's not done with you yet," she whispered, then turned and walked away. Hours passed. The moon shifted. The wind picked up. The sky clouded. And then I heard it, the well humming. Not loud, but low, like a drumbeat under the soil. The Irako tree trembled. The rope around my wrist warmed. The ash bowl cracked. And the earth beneath me whispered, "Let us in." The villagers scattered. Not because of me, but because of what rose behind the tree. A figure. Not human. Not beast. Tall. Thin. Dripping wet. Its face was blank. No mouth. No nose. Just eyes, glowing white and filled with centuries of memory. It hovered, then pointed at me, and whispered, not aloud, but inside everyone's head. He opened the door. "But you built the house." Screams broke out. One man fell to the ground, shaking violently. A woman pulled her head wrap and ran into the forest. The others fled, but I couldn't move. Still bound, still silent, still watching. The figure turned to me again, moved closer, and I saw my face on its chest, carved like a mask, cracked, bleeding, smiling. Then it reached out, touched my forehead, and suddenly I saw everything. A time before houses, before language, when the well was a pit dug to bury a child. The first one, killed by her people because they believed her cursed. But she didn't die. Her memory burned into the earth, into the water, into the mouths of those who drank it. That child became the seed. And from her, the well was born. Each generation added to it. Each sacrifice fed it. And the village grew fat on its protection. Until one day, they forgot. They sealed the well, tried to bury their guilt. But guilt is not soil. It cannot be covered, only fed. I blinked. The figure was gone. The ropes were gone. I was lying on the ground alone. But the tree now had faces in its bark. Dozens. Some I recognized. Some I didn't. All watching. I returned to the village. The people avoided me completely now. No greetings. No threats. Just silence. A silence louder than screams. That night, I sat by the well again. The seal remained, but water had started to leak through its cracks. The ground beneath it glowed faintly. A pulse. A warning. The village gave the first child to the well, and I gave it memory. Now, it remembers everything, and it wants the world to know. I left the village before sunrise. No goodbyes. No bags. Just my feet, the shirt on my back, and the truth burning behind my eyes. The dirt road was empty. Even the birds didn't sing. Each step I took felt like betrayal, like I was pulling something heavy behind me, though I carried nothing. But I didn't stop. I had to get out, because something had changed. The well wasn't just in Omoala anymore. It was in me. I walked for hours. Through forest. Through riverbank. Through silence. By mid-afternoon, I reached the main road. A bus waited. Old. Faded. Creaking. The driver barely looked at me when I got in. 3 other passengers stared ahead, blank. The engine growled, and we pulled away. I didn't look back, but halfway down the highway, the road flooded. Not with water, with voices. From the trees, from the cracks in the road, from inside the bus. Whispers crawling under my skin. "Obinna, you left us. We carried you once. Now you carry us." The bus jerked. The driver slammed the brakes. We all looked ahead, standing in the middle of the road. Chinello, wearing the same red ribbon, dripping wet, eyes empty. She pointed at me. Then she smiled. I screamed, ran out the back of the bus, fell into the red sand. But when I looked up, she was gone. And the road? Dry. I kept walking. Hours more. Eventually, I reached a town. Ogechi. Civilization. People. Noise. Electricity. Laughter. I exhaled for the first time in days. I found a cyber cafe. Sat down. Logged in. Typed a title. What lurks beneath the village water well? Started writing. Not for clicks. Not for likes. But for survival. If I could get the story out, maybe I could be free. But the moment I uploaded the first paragraph, the lights flickered. The screen turned black, then white. Then a single sentence appeared. You cannot warn them. The computer crashed. Smoke rose from the CPU. People screamed. I ran out into the street. And there, on the wall across from me, a well, painted, wet, leaking, fresh handprints smeared around it, all pointing inward. I found a hotel room that night. Locked the door, closed every window, lit a candle, opened Mama Ogechi's journal, now burned on the edges. On the last page, new writing appeared as I watched. It is not buried anymore. It is migrating. You carried it across the threshold. Now, the world will drink from it. I shook, fell to my knees, whispered a prayer I didn't believe in. Then I saw the sink in the corner of the room. Dripping. Drip. 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 The water was black. I turned off the tap. The mirror above the sink flickered. And instead of my reflection, I saw the chamber, the faces, the children, and me, standing in the center, eyes white, mouth open. They weren't in the well anymore. They were in every drop. That night, I dreamed of cities drowning, not from floods, from forgotten sins. I saw wells appearing in streets, in homes, in churches, people drinking and remembering things that never happened, things that should have, memories from the first sacrifice, passed down, from mouth to mouth, from eye to eye, until everyone saw what the village tried to bury. I woke up coughing water, my bed soaked, the faucet fully open. No one had touched it. You think it's just a well? A hole in ground? But memory is a liquid. It spreads. It leaks. It stains. And when you carry it, in next chapter, I'll show you how the well followed me into the city, and how what I thought was survival became the beginning of something much worse. I thought I could outrun it. Thought the city would swallow the horror whole. But the city has wells, too. And some of them were already listening. The morning after the hotel incident, I wandered the streets of Ogechi in a daze. People walked past me as if I didn't exist. I stopped a boy to ask for the time. He blinked, looked through me, and said, "It's still beneath." Then walked on. I found another cyber cafe. New one, different owner. Sat down, tried to write again. Typed fast, shaky fingers, blurry eyes. Got 3 paragraphs out before the screen turned red, then black. Then showed me a live feed of the village well. Still sealed, still silent. But something was moving under the water. That night, I checked into another hotel. I didn't sleep, too scared. So I walked, street after street. And I noticed, fountains were drying up, pipes were rattling, taps were gurgling, and every pothole filled with rainwater seemed deeper. By dawn, the city started changing. Not all at once, but subtly. A girl in a school uniform walking backward. A street vendor coughing up sand. A man selling water in old jerrycans who looked straight at me and whispered, "Memory is a disease, and you're contagious." I ran to a church, any church, lit candles, knelt, prayed. The priest watched from the corner, silent, motionless. And then he said, "Even Christ asked for water, and they gave him vinegar." I left the church, found myself at a roundabout I didn't remember walking to. In the center was a new sculpture. Tall, stone, wet. It was a well. Not traditional, not decorative. It was exact, down to the same cracks, moss patterns, and rusted chains. It hadn't been there yesterday, and surrounding it were photos of people. Dozens, all with one word written under them. Drank. My knees buckled. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone again. A man passed by and dropped a coin at my feet. He looked confused, as if he didn't know why he did it, as if something else moved him. Then I realized they were starting to forget. Not just me, themselves, their names, their routes. Even their reflections were growing fainter. The well wasn't just feeding, it was rewriting. I went to a TV station, broke in, grabbed a mic during a live segment, started screaming, telling everyone what I'd seen, what I knew, what I had done. The cameras captured every word, until the signal cut. The crew stared, then turned back to their work like nothing happened, like I had never been there. Later, I checked online. The news headline read, "Man caught rambling at fountain installation. Mental health advocates respond." No mention of my name. No video. No proof. I stood in front of a street mirror. Looked into my reflection. Nothing. Just water. flowing behind my glass image. And the sound of a bell, faint but growing louder. Not the village bell, a new one, a city bell. Back in my hotel, the walls began to sweat. Water trickled from the electrical sockets. The TV turned on by itself. Chica's drawing appeared on the screen. The black figure, now bigger, now consuming the entire paper. Then the screen cracked. Words etched into it from the inside. You are the next well. I felt my knees. Vomited black water. My hands trembled. My teeth ached. And then I heard it speak again. You opened your mouth and they drank. This was never about saving the village or escaping. It was about containment. And I failed. In next chapter, we reach the end. The well becomes global. Obinna's final act may be the only way to stop it or become it entirely. And just like that, the water remembers. I stopped running, not because I was brave, but because there was nowhere left to go. The city had begun to rot. Water flowed where no water should be. Rooftops leaked from clear skies. Billboards dripped. Mirrors cried. Children drew wells without knowing why. And in the reflection of every puddle, there were faces. I walked the streets with soaked shoes. No one saw me, but everyone felt me, because I carried it now. The well wasn't beneath Umuala anymore. It was beneath my skin. I returned to the roundabout where the replica stood. At dawn, no one else around. Only me and the well. The photos were gone, but something new sat at the base. A calabash. Sealed. Old. Humming. I recognized it from Mama Ogechi's dreams. This will come to you when the well finds its last keeper. I opened it. Inside was not water, not blood, not ash. It was light, pale, liquid, moving. A whisper poured out. Do not drink. Do not pour. Choose. My hand shook, because now I understood. I was the vessel. Either I carry it forever, or I give it to someone else. Let the cycle restart. Let the village become a story again. A whisper. A mystery. I thought of Chinello, of her laughter, of her drowning, of her face on the highway. What had she become? Another voice? Another memory? Or was she still in there? The calabash pulsed. My head spun. I dropped to my knees, teeth chattering. From the cracks of the road, water burst upward. Not ordinary water. This water had images in it. Faces. Moments. Memories I never lived. The birth of a child. A scream from the 1800s. A priest setting fire to a scroll. A girl whispering to the moon in Igbo. A man locking a boy in a hut, calling it protection. These weren't just stories. They were souls. And they were begging. Not to be saved, but to be believed. I stood, held the calabash, walked into the center of the roundabout. Traffic stopped. Pedestrians froze. Even the birds hovered, suspended in air. The world paused, waiting. I tilted the calabash, but didn't pour. I placed it on the lips of the replica well. Whispered, this story belongs to everyone now. And stepped back. The earth trembled. Cracks split the roundabout. Water gushed upward, but instead of drowning the city, it reversed. Water returned to the sky. Buildings uncracked. Mirrors cleared. The billboards stopped bleeding. The people blinked like waking from a dream. The replica crumbled. The calabash dried, and I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. Doctors said I was found unconscious. They asked if I remembered anything. I said no, but in truth, I remembered everything. I walked out of the hospital 2 days later, found a nearby well. Not haunted, not cursed, just a hole. I dropped a coin in it, not for luck, but for remembrance. Because forgetting is what started all this, and remembering is the only thing that ever ends it. The well beneath Umuala is sealed now, but others remain. And all it takes is one person, one story, one secret to dig another hole in the ground. If you ever find yourself standing over a well that feels too cold, if the water seems to shimmer with things you've never seen, don't drink. And whatever you do, don't listen. If this story chilled you, moved you, or made you question what lurks beneath the surface, like, comment, and subscribe, because the next tale might be your village's secret.